Okay, so this is gonna be a short but very effective video about gentrification. In the previous episode we have definitely elaborated more of a subtle gentrification or gentrification process conducted by a single little building, but this will be the first time to explore a massive, explicit and direct gentrification of a whole neighborhood. Sorry that we are filming during nighttime, we hope it's not gonna be a big problem, but without further ado, let's start stripping some architecture and gentrification. So right now we're in Boston, and when we were heading to Boston, people told me, oh, you know what, you have to go and check Boston's Seaport District. There is a lot of urban renewal, densification and development going on there. And the first thing that came on my mind was that, okay, finally, they have designed some walkable, car-free neighborhood with plenty of parks, schools and interconnected residential building typologies. So I said, great, let's go and check this new modern way of thinking in America. And we arrived here, and the first thing that I saw was this building over here. I don't know if you can really notice it, but it has some very extravagant architecture, and guess what? It is a residential building. So I think it was clear. Gentrification. Show it after seeing this building, which we will show it later in the video. Then I start noticing different things. Well, nicely paved streets, big hotels and many other chic designs. Talked with the locals a little bit, and I don't know if you know, but in Boston the public transport is really a real mess, and it's not very well designed and it's in a poor condition. But this area is actually connected with one of the Boston's best transport system, which is the blue line, I think, or the silver one line was, I'm not very sure, but it's actually the prettiest, and some of them, they call it like the Wonderland. You know, it's a classical story. This was a whole industrial neighborhood area, which the only recognizable thing was the new Museum for Contemporary Art, ICA, and it was actually a good potential to be redesigned as a nice, new, affordable residential area. But now you can see all these buildings over here are actually freshly new design. And I think it's quite clear that once you see glass curtain facade buildings used as residential buildings, it's clear that it's gentrification process, because these apartment units are very expensive. I'm not sure how much you can see from here, but this building here has some chic design, which it reminds of a hotel or maybe office buildings, but is actually meant to be full with exclusive apartment units. So you can imagine the real estate price goes higher and higher. Now, while speaking about public transport, also Boston is not very famous about great cycling infrastructure, but on this place, in this area, there is plenty of marked cycling lanes here, and maybe you can see it over there, where actually a whole lane is being repurposed from the cars for the cyclists. Well, another mark for gentrification is because whenever you get to see cycling lane in car-centered urbanism in a city where the public transport is poorly designed and not maintained, that's also rings another bell for the gentrification. Also, another thing is when you see at the people here, you can kind of feel it and smell the gentrification and elite in the air. You can see that they're wearing some different expensive brands for coats, and they all have nice hairstyles, nail polished, and of course in all of these buildings, I don't know if you can see there, that's a gym, and actually there's plenty of gyms with glass facades, with glass curtain walls, so they can look at the public domain while practicing, while exercising. So, you know, again, who has time to exercise and to be fit? It's always the rich people, especially in America, I think. Now we're just coming up to the ground floor of this crazily, insanely expensive building over here, and you can see what is the marketing they're using it. It says, yeah, live exquisite. Another thing we have seen is that the diversity is not actually big over here. What I can see, it's mostly just white people, but those people who are working inside the places are from a different ethnicity, different ethnical background. I'll show you here the pure gentrification of it. For example, I think this is part of the spaces that must be dedicated for public use, but they're still private. But even though they're freshly now designed, they are actually full of weird and unsustainable design elements. The court, again, it's designed without some very thoughtful landscape. It's very, the materials are like, and I think it's purely telling you, be aware we're watching you. And it's quite strange for US city, for American city, that there is a sign that says no pets allowed. That's a red light, because apparently they don't want poops over here. But as you can see, the water, the natural water infiltration system is shitty, and they have to use still these kind of artificial infiltration water systems that can just collect the water in huge tanks and deliver it to the ocean. And of course, all these buildings have giant lobbies, which you can only imagine how much money and finances go into warming up and heating up these places. And as you can see, some of the lobby areas inside the hotels, they're quite exquisite and exclusive. And this is only one part. This is only one building. You can now see all these new buildings built in the last 3-5 years. Many of them are actually combination of offices and apartments. And of course, over here on the ground floor we have display, or we have a store of a very expensive and chic electric vehicles, like Lucid, for example, is here. And I think a bit further down there is for Tesla, which again, it obviously clearly tells you who is using these cars and actually who lives here, and for which market these vehicles are dedicated to. Now look at this, for example, it's very interesting. There is a huge salon for nail polishing. I mean, in this neighborhood, it's a flourishing business, I think, with the nail polishing places. Yes, while people don't have what to eat or they're struggling for their lives, there is people that cannot stop spending their money on nail polishing. And just imagine how much you should be paying rent in a very gentrified and expensive area on the ground floor in Boston. So nail polishing is probably a booming industry. Then, of course, we find plenty and lots of banks, because you know rich people want to be next to banks, because banks have a lot of cameras, and when you have a lot of cameras, that means a lot of protection of the private but of the public space as well. And rich people love controlled public space, which of course it's for them. This is very interesting. Like, for example, such a shitty public transport system, but then you have a cycling lane over here in a car-centered urbanism. So you see they dedicated a whole lane for the bicycles, which is, on the first side you will say like, oh, that's great, no problem, amazing. But what happens is actually that many people in many parts of the city or in the suburbia where the real people live don't have any kind of infrastructure for cycling. So you know, today, like, cycling is in America, while in Europe we take it as a functional method of transportation. Here is being seen more as a chic thing that only rich or maybe students can do it, and not for a long time. It's probably just for recreation. And of course, I mean, there is like literally two spots for locking your bicycle there. But yeah, let's continue. Then over here we have another residence and a hotel that's like also very pricey. But on the other side you can also see plenty, again, new buildings that are all meant to be sold, partially sold. I don't know how actually used are now, but as apartments. So all of these are chic apartments. But however, let's see what else. Another thing that you can find it very often in these kind of areas is, of course, what comes with the nail polishing industry comes cosmetics. So you can see plenty of cosmetic stores, and again, I cannot understand how cosmetics can have so much money to earn and pay for ground floors. To see, you have to just like see the size of this lobby. Look at the ground floor. So this is the ground floor of one residential access controlled building. So I don't know if you can see how big it is. It's ginormous. Most of the days it's empty actually, and it is actually empty. There is little tiny gates that can control you with electrical chips, but what are these actually lobbies over here? What is the purpose? To sit there, to enjoy, or to have fun? No. It is actually a protection buffer zone from the public domain. Again, another residential building, or a residential building with controlled access and a big giant lobby, which God knows how much money have to be paid for heating and installations. But you know, when you have the money. But what is interesting, I often see that kind of gates, and those gates are actually just for you to have a chip in your pocket and you can just go and see this ground floor, how it has been designed. And believe it or not, you can see the balconies up there, which, you know, it means it's apartment and residential. And you have the ground floor with this stylish design of, I don't even understand, this kind of art truss or a column structure that in a decorative way supports the building. Very, very strange. On the other side over there you can see the whole lobby has chandeliers, crystal chandeliers. And of course, rich people have always to have access to the nice mainland, but also right next to the ocean. And the ocean and the seaport, because this is the old Boston, old Seaport District, there they can nicely dock their yachts or boats and can come and enjoy and continue with their... Yeah! So the guy just like yelled to us. Finally, the point for this video is that whenever I come here in Boston, it's a very nice city. I have to say it. I really love it, and there is much to learn from this city. But whenever we come here, we kind of feel tension between people from the suburbs and people from the city. Briefly, in the end, a sketched reflection of a twisted process we have discovered called auto-segregation.
More precisely, big development are always welcome in the city because they create loads of jobs in the construction sector, which are mainly filled by people who are coming from suburbs.
However, when these people are working on this kind of big gentrification processes, they're actually being paid for building a huge wall, a barrier between the city and the suburbs, actually between different classes of people.
In other words, they are auto-segregating themselves from the elite in the city.
Yeah.
Thanks again for watching this video, liking, sharing and commenting. For sure, it's more than welcome.
See you till the next episode.